Welcome to the Encouragement Conquers All podcast with Justin Fatica, the podcast for people who want to learn how to be the most encouraging person on the planet and enhance their encouragement superpowers. Now here's your host, Justin.
How's it going, everybody? You know where we're at. We're at the most encouraging podcast on the planet. The bottom line is, are you the most encouraging person on the planet? That's what you got to ask yourself. Every week we have a different guest, or we have a message that can encourage you, can challenge you to be that encouraging person in your family life, in this world, with such diverse groups of people, silos, people fighting, right? We need to find a way to be congruent in thinking, thought. We need to find a way to care about one another, find a way to have conversation. And I bring people on here that can help us to do that and find ways to do that. Because right now there's such a separation. I'm calling all atheists. If you're out there and you're the most encouraging person on the planet, jump on board. I'm calling anyone from different faith backgrounds, calling you out saying, look, if you're the most encouraging person on the planet, because that's who I want on these shows. If you are that person, you should be reaching out to us. If you don't know who I am, I'm Justin Fatica, and today's a great day because it's time to be encouraged. The next guest I have on here, he actually has been working in all boys education for over 20 years in high schools in Tampa, high schools in Washington, D.C. He actually understands the gift of diversity. He understands the gift of working together as a team. He's a great person to talk about being encouraging. He's actually a co-founder of our mission, Hard as Nails, our mission that awakens the world to the power of God's love. And he actually is somebody who's the godfather of one of my children, John Paul, who we don't know if he's going to be what he's going to be or what he's going to do in his life. But I know through his prayers and encouragement, he's going to do great things. He's one of my best friends. But that doesn't mean that we don't disagree on things. We can disagree, but be on the same page. And that's what we need. We need disagreements with conversation. So even maybe we might disagree today, but guess what? We're going to go after it with all we got. He's one of my best friends. Come on here, Brian Greenfield. Brian Greenfield, all the way from Tampa. All right.
Yep.
And here we go.
Yes,
But tell everybody, if people don't know who you are, Brian Greenfield, tell them a little bit about yourself and what your focus is. Go for it. What do you got going on in your life? And tell them a little bit about yourself, your story, and where you're from and where you're at now.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Washington, D.C., went to college in New Jersey. That's where we met. That's where we interacted. Had a profound experience with the Lord and adoration. It must be my sophomore year. And ever since then, been striving, been having this walk with the Lord, and been working in ministry in various forms. Part-time, I do ministry. I travel around the country and I give talks and, for youth and adults. But my 9 to 5, I guess, kind of what I do on a daily basis every day. I work at, I'm an educator. So I work in an all-guys high school in Tampa, Florida. I started at
all guys. That's got to be interesting.
Catholic school in New Jersey. We worked at. Yep. Yeah, went to all guys high school in DC, and now I'm all guys high school in Tampa, Florida. So that's kind of that's kind of what I do, and I'm a father and husband. So all of that together keeps me kind of busy.
And you're an unbelievable father, and your kids are doing unbelievable things. So you bring great value to America. You bring great value to the faith. And also, not only are you a great father, you're a great leader, great speaker. I've been telling you that since we met. You're going to be a great speaker, all right? And you're crushing it, and you're a great educator. And I want to talk about what I really want to talk about today, because I think we're losing. I don't know. From my perspective, I'm a product of all boys education, just so everybody knows. And what are your thoughts on all? Like, it seems like all boys or single sex education is going down in the sense of that that's happening less, because I see a lot of, no matter what background, faith background you're from, that these schools are closing more so. But your school isn't closing.
Yeah.
Do you think right now, with where we're at with, this male, female, the transgender situation, like how does all boys education fit within our world right now?
I think just off the cuff, I think it's important for the formation of men, for the formation of guys. Again, like with any education, all boys co-ed, you have to have the right people teaching, right people doing the instruction, the right people leading the schools for it to be successful, right? But I think for young men, look, we learn to be men by observing other good men. Men understand, I think, because of the experience, what a young man goes through from, I would say, from 6th grade through 12th grade, because we've been there ourselves. And I'm not saying that women can't understand that, and that women don't bring holiness and they're not necessary in a young man's education. But I think being around young men and understanding that what I'm going through is nothing weird, what I'm going through is not out of the norm. I think, guys, being surrounded by guys, I think that's key, especially in the development as they get older, high school, younger ages. I think it's just key for young men to be around young men.
Yeah, I was listening to a message from one of your favorite speakers out there, Bishop T.D. Jakes, one of your favorite speakers, Bishop T.D. Jakes, and he said, "Look, ladies, I'm not going to tell you how to birth a child." You know what I mean? He goes, "I'm not going to tell you, ladies, like how to have a kid. That's not my job." So he goes, "So don't tell me how to be a father. Don't tell me how to be a man. A man knows how to be a man. And a father knows how to be a father, just like a woman knows how to birth a child." What are your thoughts on that? Do you agree with that sentiment, what he's sharing?
I think 100%. I mean, like, my mother's phenomenal. I love my mother, but she can't tell me, she can't tell me how to be a man because she's never experienced what I've gone through. She hasn't experienced being a man. She can tell me what she thinks a good man should have inside of him, but she can't give me that experiential knowledge. She can teach me about virtue as she's learned virtue. But this is what I see with young men, especially like the guys that I work with. They go through things 6th through 12th grade, because of their development, because of their growth, because of their age, because of their experiences that, and I'm not talking about like on an education learning level. Anyone can teach, anyone can instruct. I'm talking about a development level. How do I respond to life? How do I respond to my growth? I have all of these emotions going on inside of me. How do I, how do I synthesize that? How do I understand how to act in those situations? Now, my mother can give me good instruction. My mother can give me good moral teaching. But when I'm developing and I'm trying to figure out what it means to be a man, it's going to be very hard for my mother to tell me how to be a man when she's never been a man. It's going to be very hard for my mom can tell me, what she's experienced. But my mother can't tell me what it means to be a good father because she's never stepped into that role as father. She can talk to me about parenting, but what does it mean to be a good father? It's going to be difficult for her to do that. And in some way, shape, or form, it's unfair to put that on her and expect her to be able to tell me what it means to be a good father. It's going to be difficult for my mother to tell me what it means to be a good husband because she's never been a husband. She doesn't experience the life as a man, with the things that men go through. So she'll give me her best, but her best may not be all that I need to hear. And for these young men, they're going through all of this development and, another man understands what they're going through, right? Because they've been through that. They understand it just like on a natural level. So they can more easily form them and understand, okay, this is what this guy is going through. This energy that he has is not necessarily negative, It just needs to be formed in the right way. And if I form it in the right way, then, he'll be a great man. He'll use the energy in a positive way. Same thing with the faith. Young men have just natural inclinations. You can see that, the way that they play when they're younger and the things that they're attracted to as they get older. They have just natural inclinations. Now, this is not a universal, there's a spectrum of other guys like other things, but I'm just saying, just a majority of guys have these natural, proclivities and inclinations. And when it comes to the faith, if you tell a young man that a man of God looks different than his natural inclinations, then it's going to be difficult for him to internalize the faith, accept the faith, want to live out the faith, and know his identity in the faith. So, and now all of those things, we can talk about those things for days. But I think just on a general level, it's important for guys to learn, what it means to be a man of God. And we learn that through observing men of God, from having those heart-to-heart conversations with guys that have been through what we've gone through. Again, this is not saying that, women aren't valuable or aren't virtuous or don't bring another dynamic to the formation of men, because they do. They definitely do. But we can't say that a male's role, that a guy has an indifferent role when it comes to the formation of men.
So what about for you? What was like? How did your mother play? In your life. I know your story pretty well.
Yeah.
And how did your father play? And did they have to overcompensate or undercompensate with your situation growing up?
So my father, for various reasons, and my story, he was around, but he wasn't around all the time, right? He took care of us. He wasn't like one of those guys that was never in our lives, but it was just difficult, right? My mother, I think she, in a way, she had to overcompensate in many ways to try to form me into a good man. So my mother was compassionate with me. I know my mother loved me, but my mother didn't play around. And I think everything that my mother did was done in an effort to form me into being what she felt would be a good husband and a good father, a general good man. So she shared her heart with me. She gave me her heart. She gave me strength, right? My father, he was a great provider for me and the family. He was a great provider, and he gave me the message of the responsibility that men have to take care of their family.
So for me, I coach basketball. I got a lot of the guys that don't have their father always there.
Yeah.
Similar to your situation, and even more so than you went through. How do you think that affects the students that you work with at the all boys school? And how do you think it affected you and affects my players?
So if you don't have because it's interesting that you asked me this question, because I'm walking through this now. Now, this has been things that, and we've discussed this, my struggles and my hurts and my brokenness. These have been things that I've been working through for the last 20 years, man. Ever since me and you have known each other. But I'm more keenly focused on it now. Maybe because I'm getting older. Maybe because I'm my position at this school. Maybe because I'm looking at my son and I'm having these questions. And part of it's because my father's getting older, and my father's almost 90 years old, and and he's getting older.
Unbelievable, and he's still firing it up.
He is, but he is. But what does it do? I think with me, and with a lot of your young men, there's a brokenness that manifests itself in different ways when you don't have a father in your life. And I'm not talking about a father who's just, who's just, a figure that's there, but I'm talking about a father who's actually present to their son. There's presence, Presents, and there's presence, Presence. So we need that ENCE sort of presence of a father in a young boy's life, because if they're not there, there's a brokenness that manifests itself in shame and insecurity and hopelessness and isolation, and it manifests itself in that young man's life, and it manifests itself in that older man's life. There's an
Yeah.
insecurity that you walk around in because you don't feel covered, because the person that was supposed to cover you wasn't there. The person that was supposed to give you strength and give you affirmation wasn't there. So then what do? You begin to overcompensate in other areas of life. So what do? You act tougher than you need to be. You act more guarded than you need to be. And all of it is out of a lack of confidence, right? Part of it's out of the desire to be in control, because the rest of your life there hasn't been a lot of control. It manifests itself in isolation. And that's what men do a lot. We isolate ourselves a lot in order to feel safe, because we don't feel covered. It manifests itself in the way that we look at God. We talk about God. We say this a lot, God our Father. But we don't take into account, what if a guy's experience of father is other than virtuous? And we're telling this young man, look at God as your father. And that young man, because this is true with me. And that young man is saying to himself, yeah, but I don't like this term father. But we're telling him that God is a father. So in our effort to bring them closer to God and to heal their hearts, we're unknowingly pushing them away, because we're making God synonymous with a figure that this person isn't close to or may have a negative, affiliation with. So the father dynamic is tough.
So I get so my question is this: how does a mother, you'd understand this in a deeper way than I would, how does a mother who's a single mother, what's the best way practically, for them to be able to? Because I see so many single mothers, their kids are either extremely violent,
yeah,
or they have an extreme self-hatred,
yeah,
like you're talking about, the overcompensation, or they're overly obsessive, maybe.
yeah.
And I'm not just saying it's just because of the father, could be multiple situations, but from my perspective, I've seen a lot of that in my experience, that when they don't have that father figure in the mother, that there is the extremity in those areas. What would you tell a single mother? She's throwing her hands up going what do I even do with my children?
I always say this, and this is going to make people angry. I had a woman come up to me one day at a talk. I was in New York and gave a talk, and she said to me, after I'd given the talk about Adam and Eve and relationships, husband, fathers, she came up to me when there's a Q&A part, and she said, well, I am mother and father for my son. I don't need a man. I'm mother and father for my son. And I told her, said, no, you're not. You're not mother and father. You may be a phenomenal mom. You may be a strong mom, but you are not father for this kid. And to an extent, it'd be unfair for anyone to expect you to be father for this kid. You're a great mom. What I would say is this: if your biological father doesn't father you, there's many in your life that will show you what a father is supposed to be. It may not be one man, because a lot of times we look for one man to give us the understanding of what a father is supposed to be. It could be multiple men that show that heal your understanding of father, that affirm you the way that a father is supposed to affirm you, and that show you what a father is. Like your young men that you and your basketball team, they may not have fathers, but they have you, right? Now, there's no expectation for you to be their father. You can't be their father, but you can heal their heart. You can show them what a father should look like by the way that you act, by the way that you interact with them, by the way that you encourage them, but also by the way that you challenge them, by the way that you call them out on things. I think when you surround, and this is what kind of, I'm telling you this because this is kind of what I'm going through right now. When you surround them with good men, then those men have the opportunity to heal that father wound, or to give them the things that their biological father should have given them, but for some reason weren't willing to or weren't able to. Because some of them, they'll never hear what they want to. They'll never hear what they need to hear from their biological father. They'll never hear it, but they'll have you guys in their life that will give them the words that they need to hear.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense on a very practical level, because let's say my father was 60% or 70% of the father, like probably I'll be 60, 70% of the father that I should be or I could be. Like if you talk about the idealistic father, let's say the perfect father, the father like we would say, God the Father, right?
Yeah.
Well, I had to get Father Larry Richards and Greg Schleter, and I had to get Coach, H, and those three guys were like the first three that kind of like started narrowing that gap. Then I got this guy Rick Burslem, who's a Baptist, headmaster of a school who started doing that. Then I got Danny Buggs and all these older men started to like narrow the gap so I could see more clearly. And I think you're bringing out if a kid has no father, then he'd probably have to have is that what he'd have to have many examples
They would have
to bridge the gap.
He'd be fathered by multiple people.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
I love that, and I think that's where our country's going. Don't you think?
I think it has to be. I mean, well, to an extent, there's no choice. I mean, there's no other option. I mean, there's if some men choose not to father, there's two options, right? Let the kids just go. Let them go. Let them go. Let them run wild, or give what you can give. You know what I mean? You can't let them run wild, and people think just leaving them alone is going to it's going to make their lives easier. It's not, because it's the guys who aren't fathered. They're going to have a major impact on the world that we live in. So we can either get them on the front end and show them another way, or just let them run wild and hope that someone else will do it. And sometimes it happens, but I would say this, that I think if we gotta, as men, we have to step into the gap, and that's not like daunting. It's just I would start with the young men that you have in your life. If you want to go out and search for young men that need you, that's fine. But you can't search for young men that need you somewhere else and ignore the guys that are present to you on a daily basis. Start with those guys, and just we would have to do that. But I think what you're saying, I think it's not just affecting young people. How many like men's conferences have we gone to? Have you gone to? I speak at a father-son retreat that we have at our school. We think that like just teenage guys struggle with this father-son.
Of course.
Older guys, when you want to see emotions come out, speak to some older men and start touching on that father wound. You know what I mean? And those emotions, because once they break, because they've been holding it in for so long, once they break and once they receive a sense of healing or words of affirmation or words of encouragement from other men or men that care about them, they need it also.
So I got a question for you. Like, I think one of the most controversial questions I could ask you is all boys education needed right now? And are you getting pushback in your school at all? Like, even though your school is probably one of the more vibrant, all boys schools in the country, it's one of the better schools, that I've been all over the country. And I saw your school, not just financially, but, spiritually, not just spiritually, but emotionally, not just emotionally, but, morally, not just morally, but educationally. So it's strong all across, and athletically as well. So you're a healthy school. Are you getting, the world would say you're getting pushback. That's what everybody, if I were to ask 100 people, is all boys education getting pushback to stop this now? This is disrespectful. Are you getting any pushback?
I guess this is a multifaceted answer. I think locally, it hasn't come to my attention locally. People respect the school. But when I look at what we do at my school here and kind of the national trend, heck yeah. Just the way
what would they push back on saying isn't?
I think they will push. I think they'll push back on the fact that we're an all guys school. I think that they will push back on the fact, and listen, man, I grew up in like the late 80s and 90s, so some in 2000, some of this is ridiculous. But they will push back on the fact that we would say that guys are guys, that we would differentiate guys from girls, or we would say that this is a definition of a guy. This is a definition of a man. I think they will push back on that. I think they will push back on the moral formation that we give these young men, that we call these young men as men of God to be protectors and providers for their families. We call these young men to serve their children and serve their wives.
So you talk to the boys like that. You talk to the boys like that.
Yeah, this is part of their formation. They can't go through 4 years of being here without like hearing that message numerous times. But I think when you get to if you look at it on a superficial level, some people will get insulted, right?
Yeah.
But when you look at it on, a spiritual, like real level, at the end of the day, we're telling these young men to be servants of the people in your life, to safeguard the integrity of the people in your life. That's what we're telling them. We're not. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking these questions because I'm just interested in your answer. We're very similar to where we're at. I read a study recently that 70% of the most violent people in the world are men. But this is interesting. So somebody that say men and women are wrong, they would say, well, there are violent women and there are violent men because 30% of the most violent people are women and 70% are men. But the interesting part of the study wasn't that. The interesting part of the study was this. The top 100 most violent people from this statistic that have done the most heinous violent crimes are men.
Yeah.
The top 100 that have raped the most women are men, even though it's around 80-20 that women have sexually assaulted young people and men have sexually assaulted young people. It's 80-20, but the top 100 are men. So why do you think, I don't know, I haven't thought about this. I'm interested in your thoughts with those stats and those two studies. Like, why is all boys education more important when you're dealing with those situations? Because this at events, when we do events, who are the loudest at the event usually?
Guys, yeah.
The guys, even if it's a co-ed school. Now, if you go to an all boys event, that's why we do so well, because it's off the chart. But we're encouraging that. But if I do a co-ed event and I encourage that kind of activity, 1 out of 10 times, I'm going to get pulled back as a speaker and go, well, you could have toned it down a little bit there. What are your thoughts on this?
So I guess to that statistic, where I think that's a multi-layered thing, because I think you have the spiritual aspect, right? And we all know this, that the enemy is trying to destroy men, right? You destroy men, you can destroy a family. You destroy a family, you destroy the fabric of the culture, right? So
how do you destroy a man? How do you destroy a man? How does that happen?
You misguide. This is what you do easily. You pervert his notion of masculinity. You make it a perversion of what it's supposed to be. You make them misconstrue machismo versus masculinity. You confuse the standard of a man. A man is to be a man is to use your strength at the service of another. That's what being a man is. Use your strength at the service of another. That's from Adam to Jesus, using your strength at the service of another. You tell a man that your strength is to be used at the service of selfishness as opposed to selflessness. So you just bombard them with that. You bombard them with insecurities. You bombard them with a message of ego-based masculinity, using other people. You take away a firm foundation that they can judge masculinity with. You make everything subjective. You make everything ego-based. And then you tell them, like, a robot is going to follow the programming. You give them the programming on television, in sports, in music, in social media. This is what it means to be a man. And we know that is valid because the loudest voices in the room are telling us that. That's what you give them, that message, right? And you just let them go. And then what you do, you just take out other men, from their lives, and you make their mothers have to do the brunt of the work, right? or you take out any sort of parental influence from their lives and just let them go. That's how you destroy man. Because the kid will do all of these self-destructive things thinking that he's doing the virtuous thing. Think that Aristotle talked about different types of people, right? Virtuous, continent, incontinent, and vicious people, right? He said that vicious people do the wrong thing because they think that it's right, and they do the wrong thing with pure ease. So this is what you teach people the wrong message, and you say this is what it means to be a man, and then what you do, you need to shut down any sort of voice of actual masculinity. Shut that down. Do not let them get any sort of voice of truth in their lives, and then let them go. And then it's easy to see how you get bully culture. Then because everyone's competition to me. I got to prove myself over this other person. Me and him can't both be great men. I got to be better than him. So then you get bully culture, and then you get the culture of people of men that say, you know what, I'm just going to take what I want. And then whether it's financially or whether it's physically, I'm just going to take what I want. And there's no other men around them that can tell them, this is not the way to go. And then wait till they get a little bit older. And then watch them form other men in the same way, in the same broken way that they've been formed. You do that, then it's easy to see why you get those statistics.
So then how do we change the paradigm? Like, what's the answer? Is it all boys education? Is that the answer? I'm sure
it's not the only answer. Yeah. It's not the only thing. It's part of it. I think one of them is, and this is going to sound,
because men are a problem, Brian.
Yeah, the men are a problem. But I think families is one, right? You talk about all boys education, right? Families are you can't replace the family, so that's one thing. That's a given. With all boys education, it's like we're affirming the families that are doing it right, and we're fighting back against a culture that wants to do it wrong. You know what I mean?
And why would all boys more than, I'm not trying to diss co-ed school, I'm just trying to get the difference. Why would an all boys school be able to fight in a greater way than, because I don't know if you believe this, but I believe if an all boys school is done right, it can do a greater job at raising young men than a co-ed school.
If it's done right?
Yeah.
What does an all guys school do? It enables guys to grow up around other guys that are going through the same experience. Like I said, or going through the same experience. Yeah. So their masculinity is being formed in the same way, and their masculinity is not seen as something that is wrong with them, but something to be embraced. All guys school, masculinity can be clarified by teachers who have gone through it themselves, right?
Do you have more guys teachers or girls?
More men.
Yeah, but that's not the case in even in the high school sector, right? Or no?
That's not always the case. I mean, I think
I wonder what the national. I don't know it, but the national statistic of men and women high school teachers.
So I'm not sure. That'd be interesting to find out. But I think one of them, because there's different dynamics, right? I think with all boys school, there's a certain culture that's been created over time to make the all boys school the all boys school. This is the ones that I've seen, right? And part of that culture, there's a definition of what we're looking for in the formation of these men. We're not just bringing them here to educate and just throwing a whole lot of things at them, right? And there's a culture of alumni that will come back and serve the men, and the alumni know the standards, so they know the formation. So even if they're not maybe campus ministry or discipline, maybe they're a science teacher, they've gone through the formation themselves. They understand what it is. And I think a lot of the all guys schools have that sort of dynamic, that sort of school culture that I don't know if a lot of co-ed schools has the same sort of culture. And I think part of it is, since it's all guys, it can be focused on the formation of men as opposed to just focus on the formation of people in general. I think you focus on the formation of people in general. I don't know how you can form, because we're different. If you're focused on just general formation of everybody, it's going to take a concerted effort to form young women into being young women, young men into being young men, and the nuances and the questions that come with that. So
So I think the one negative about all boys education, which I'd agree on, the one negative I'd agree on that maybe you don't agree with this, but I think the one negative is they're not able to understand women as well as if somebody went to a co-ed school. So the first question, how would you agree with that? And like, how do you like
Yeah.
work on that in all boys education?
Yeah, I think that is a problem. I think I think it's more it's a little bit more difficult. I think part of it is I don't know if it's in I don't know if it's with the school per se, but I think the school has to clarify and has to push against some of the social norms. You know what I mean?
Because I don't know
As
about
far,
you, but when a girl would come in our school, they'd start barking. Do they still do
yeah,
that?
so they don't do that, but our guys aren't.
At least
Yeah,
evolved a little bit from
our guys aren't going to do that. But I think they need to know how to interact with young women in the proper way, and I think that puts a heavier impetus on the teachers and the parents to teach them how to interact with young
yeah.
people, the young women the right way. So yeah, that is one of those things that if you're working in an all guys school, you need to key in on. And I think we do a pretty good job at teaching these young men like respect and how to respect young women. I don't think there's too many like all guys schools that permit a culture of just going crazy like that. Now, if that culture happens, it's not like it's a student led sort of activity,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's not a teacher that
No,
you're not barking at the girls, Brian, when they come in.
no. So I think that's. But listen, on the flip side, I don't want to like diss co-ed schools because co-ed schools can be phenomenal.
Oh, of course.
And that's one of the ways, like what you said, is one of the ways we talk about the formation of young men and how to interact with young women. You can have a great co-ed school that
They can do
can
a
teach
better.
that.
I would say they can do a better job at that.
They can do a better job than that.
That's one
Um,
thing we're missing.
that's one thing. But when I
What do
but
you
so can
guys
parents.
do?
Parents
What
can
do
do the
you
same
guys
thing.
do to teach them? What do you guys do at the school to teach them how to care for women?
I think a lot of it is in our theology classes. We
Okay.
talk to them about when you set the foundation of how you treat people, then respect, love, caring, compassion, empathy. That is universal for man or woman. So you set the solid foundation of what it means to be a man of God, and then you speak about specifics. We talk about morality, or we have a class about basically what it means to be a man, and then you speak about it, and then you open up the floor for discussion so that they can ask those questions about you. And I think when you keep it real and you share your experiences and you talk about the culture that we live in and you say, okay, this is what the culture teaches you, but this is who you're supposed to be. I think we do really good on as a theology department. We're teaching them that. The women we have on our faculty, they are like, I mean, they're great women, right? They're great, and they call these young men to task. Also, I think our campus ministry, I think they do a great job with the retreats and just speaking to the hearts of men and trying to figure out, okay, where does this mentality come from, and how do we break out of this? I think all of that as a school we do our best. The only thing that we're lacking is putting it in practice on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and I just want to get to that. Like we're saying, not all co-ed schools are bad. One and two, like all boys schools have things that they're lacking. I get. Oh, how about this? Where is your like student body on transgender, same-sex marriage? Like, where's your student body on pro-life? Like, if you bring that up, what do you think the like percentages as a student body? Where are they at? I'm just wondering. Um,
Yeah, if you bring that up here, you're not going to get much pushback on any of those things.
What they're all they want to be about pro life. And how many kids do you have at the
Well,
school? How many kids
we
are
got
there?
about 870
So you're
guys.
saying 870. Like I know you've probably never done the
I
percentage.
would say this: 870 guys. I would say a majority of them are either promoting pro-life, but none of them are going to really push back on it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? None of if if in a theology class or in a in discussion, there may be curiosity to understand, what does that mean, and what about these
What
situations?
about the transgender thing? What about that?
I would say you're not going to get in here. You're not going to get any pushback with that.
And
You
why
know,
is that? Because it seems like if you were to bring this up in, the regular, everyday culture across the country, like what's the difference, would you say? Because that's not what I'm hearing, across the board.
I think there's geographical location.
Yeah.
You know,
So they're
that.
living out the Florida way of life.
Yeah, yeah. There's geographical location. I think like if I were going to certain schools in certain areas of the country, it may not be the same thing.
Okay.
There's like just the formation, like the orthodox formation of the faith that they receive
Yeah.
here,
Well,
and I think it's
it's
parental.
interesting. It's
It is interesting.
it's an
It,
interesting
like,
thing.
and the thing is, I've gotten into it with kids in the past about like that stuff. I got into it with this one student about same sex marriage.
Yeah.
This is when I was teaching theology. This was like 5 or 6 years ago. When I was teaching in the classroom, we were talking about, he had a friend that was dating a guy, I guess, right? And we were just going back and forth, and I could see that he was getting heated. He was kind of like wanting to get into an argument, and so I asked him, "Why would you tell your friend that it's okay for him to date this other man?" And he was like, "Yeah, because I care about my friend, because I love my friend." I was like, "Yes, so you're loving of your friend." He was like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, then if I'm trying to love your friend, also, how can you get mad at me for telling him what I feel is the most loving thing for him? Wouldn't it be hateful if I were to tell your friend something that I believed in my heart was not to his benefit?" But so these young men, like all people, they're guided, they're led by their heart, right?
Yeah.
Their heart tells them that any sort of conflicting message or any message that their friends don't want to hear is hurtful or
Yeah.
negative. They don't want to be hurtful. So they take it on that superficial level.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. But when you explain to them, okay, this is more loving to your friend. And yeah, you know what they say, when you don't tell someone the truth, you're not worried about them, you're worried about you. So this young man, God bless him, he had a good heart, but he was more worried about what his friend would think about him than what was good for his friend. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. And I think that's the state of our culture.
It is.
We're not worried about truth, because the ideological reality, if you think about just the biological structure of having children or being in a same sex relationship or take it to the next level of marriage, it just doesn't work biologically.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
everybody were like, you couldn't even have everybody. So it's a subjective reality. I don't even say truth. It's not an objective fact. Same sex marriage and same sex. It's not what's best for the universe. It's not what's best for the creation, and it's not best for us as children of God. But it's not best just in the reality.
It's sentimentalism, right? It's using your emotions to dictate your morality, right? Now, here's the good thing. For a lot of them, the fact that they are being led by their heart,
Yeah,
and compassion is telling them to do that, okay, then there's something you can work with, right? But you just gotta.
And that's the whole point of this show, Brian. I want somebody who's, has an unbelievable same-sex, relationship to get on this show and tell me, look, I disagree with you 8,000%. Like, this is what's sad. I'll give you something sad. So I did a video this week. The staff wouldn't let me have it go out, but it was about like, I said, look, I said basically, shut your mouth if you won't go to lunch with somebody you disagree with. Mm-hmm. And the reason they didn't want it to go out is because I said, let's just say someone has a same-sex relationship and they were abused. Mm-hmm. And they have their relationship. And you're treating them like trash. And you don't want to, but you're just telling, oh, you're wrong for what you believe. And you're wrong, right? Yeah. Then shut your mouth, because you don't even care about that person to take them to lunch. So chill. So that's what you're talking about, that these boys have a sense of sensitivity to people and what they're
Yes.
going through. And that's important. But sensitivity without objective truth is dangerous. Wouldn't you agree?
That's true. That's how you get the world that we live in right now. We have overly sensitive things. It's sensitivity without objective truth. It's just, then it becomes, you just get permissible. Whatever makes you happy, I don't want to make you not happy. And so then you don't call anyone to task, right? If my daughter walks up to me and she says, "Dad, it would make me real happy if you let me put this dirt in my mouth." I'm going to say no. I'm not going to say anything. Well, that's your truth.
Or wearing a string bikini.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it. I'm saying no.
Are you going to let your daughter wear a string bikini?
No.
Oh, you're disrespecting those women who are wearing string bikinis. You're disrespectful.
Maybe we can have a conversation. We can go out to lunch and have that conversation.
No, but it's like we're at right now.
I mean, but it's just what it is. And I think that's what people who do ministry and people who are in the church got to understand. I mean, there has to be an understanding that, you're not going to get on the same page with everybody. You got to be okay with that.
Correct.
Or else just don't say anything.
I guess with all these different silos, with all these different, like, I call them faction belief systems, there's so many, even within our own churches or within our own evangelical movements with Christianity, and then break it down, even in our most moral humans. Like, some of the most moral humans are the biggest atheists, biggest a-holes I've ever met, right?
Yeah.
And some of our atheists are some of the most moral, loving people I've ever met. So how do we battle all this, like fact?
I think it's a commitment to truth. You know what I mean? You understand? Because truth is, I've said this for a while. Truth is that, like, equalizer, right? Truth tells me that, I may be inclined to believe something because of my experiences, and I may be inclined to say something is permissible, something is right, something is wrong based off of what I've experienced. But if truth doesn't say that it's right, I got to commit to truth. So that means I got to shift my view or suck it up. I just can't believe that. Truth brings unity. Opinions are great when things are ambiguous. But there's certain things that are foundational truths, right? And truth brings us together. Anything outside of truth causes division because there's nothing that unites us. So I think what we've seen in the past, or what I've noticed, is that there's lots of people who let their experiences form their morality. I grew up this way, so this must be the most Jesus-like way. But then when you bring someone else to the experience that says the same thing, and then they begin to form the truth to fit, their understanding, to fit what they want to actually believe, as opposed to, no. I don't fit Christ into my political box, okay? Because I don't fit Christ into this box. I look at what Christ said, and then I look at the options that are presented in front of me, right? Okay, and I let Christ be the determining factor of what I believe in as far as morality, politics, socially. But if you don't commit to truth, then even in the church, you can have devout people praying the rosary every day, and there's no change, there's no compassion, there's a devotion that enables them to justify any bad act that they do because they pray the rosary every day.
Yeah, of course.
But there's no compassion, empathy, and there's no truth. So I think there has to be a commitment to truth, and that unifies things. But that's what the enemy doesn't want. And there's
what is truth? Because I listen to some of these deists, like, moral people, out there. You could give the list. You got Joe Rogan, you got Jordan Peterson, you got a lot of these guys who they're not claiming Jesus is Lord and Savior. But even they say this, even Joe Rogan, these guys say it's crazy. They go, look, well, who other moral figure do we have that can keep society put together in the most plausible way but Jesus Christ? It's so interesting. And they'll talk about that for hours. For hours. They'll talk about how, like, Jesus and the cross and stuff. That, like, but they won't claim him as Lord and Savior, which is so interesting.
But that's the thing, man. That's the thing, man. This was ministry circa 1999. Truth is not a something, but a someone, and his name is Jesus Christ, right?
Exactly.
And that's the thing.
He's Lord and Savior. Period.
I
No
don't think.
discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it has to start with Jesus. Who's the other person that had that famous quote? What is truth? Pontius Pilate, right? What is truth? Pontius Pilate. And it's interesting, and this is our culture right now. This is the Joe Rogan, and I think it fits with Joe Rogan, and I also think it fits with Jordan Peterson. Pontius Pilate asked the question, what is truth, right? When truth is standing right in front of him. He is asking Jesus, what is truth? Truth is standing right in front of him, and he's asking, what is truth? And what does that kind of show us? If you don't want to see it, if you're determined not to see it and not to accept it, then Christ could be standing right in front of you and you will not see it. So it has to start with Christ, but there has to be humility, compassion, and strength and willingness to accept Christ as the truth. And outside of that, everything else that you're going to put in front of people is going to be limiting.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're at. And the reason I'm doing this podcast, just to throw it out there, I've got, some projects happening, but I think it's important to start, as we did initially, start with that, the all boys, like, do believe in this, do not, what do you think? Because that's where people are at right now. They want to talk about these controversial things. They want to think about that. And then we close up every show. We always end up at the same place. We end up at the same place. What is truth? What is truth? And, whether somebody believes or not believes, at the end of the day, truth is Jesus Christ. And for me, I'm not as educated as you, and I'm not as thought provoking as you. Which you're very thoughtful. You're a very thoughtful person. You're a very, I've said this to you, when you doubted it when you were younger, because those wounds that you went through. And I always said, like, you're going to be one of the most sought after speakers out there. And I know you are. And I'm confident that. And you're, trust me, the greatest things that are going to happen with you will happen. I've told you this from when you're, 50 to 75, that you're like, holy cow, look what God's doing with me. It's unbelievable. He's already done unbelievable things with you, but there's way more to come, Brian. And the one thing I think that is so important for all of us to take in, is which Brian so thoughtful brought, is that we have to be interested in other people. And I think if you could close out, because you're one of the best at this. You're always very interested at other people's thoughts, whether they agree with you or not. Your sister's one of those people that you've done an unbelievable job with. Your mother's unbelievable. Your dad, you've done an unbelievable job with. Your kids are unbelievable. That's why, because you're interested in them. And I think we need to close out this show with really challenging whatever somebody's belief system is. How can we be more interested in others than ourselves? How can we be more interested in who somebody is in front of us? Because I think that's what I call that as the gaze of Jesus.
Yeah, I think it's this. I think it's and this is what I say to anyone who's in ministry, but anyone in general. I think it's just empathy, man. I think just growing in empathy and understanding your situation and understanding that people are going through the same things, that whether you're a believer or not a believer, we all want the same things, And I think when we grow in empathy, it becomes a heart-to-heart conversation. Then I'm more so concerned with affirming you because I've been there, as opposed to seeing you as a project. You know what I mean? Then I can see if it's a heart-to-heart thing where I can connect my pain with your struggle, then I'm more concerned with being a brother to you. Then I'm not concerned with like you being a notch in my conversion belt, right? Then I can be a brother with you, and then and I think from that, changes begin to happen. It's the willingness to walk with someone, as opposed to, I think sometimes, and I've been like guilty of this also. Sometimes we want to go out and give a couple of quick words, right? And Jesus loves you, and it goes real fast.
Yeah,
Goes real fast,
yeah.
and it makes us feel good. You know what I mean? And again, I'm talking about myself. It makes us
Yeah.
feel good, and make
But
other
does
people
it
feel
make
that
anybody else feel good?
makes other people look like that we're super holy, but it's not speaking to the hurt of the individual. You know what I'm saying? Because I haven't got to know that person. I haven't walked with that person. I'm just saying stuff. And then I'm saying stuff from a judgmental place. I'm saying stuff not knowing what they're going through, but assuming that I know stuff, right? So I think understanding that at the end of the day, most people are broken. At the end of the day, most people want to know that they're cared for and that they're not alone. At the end of the day, most people want to know that they're okay, that they're going to be all right, you know? And I think if you start from that, then you got something.
Yeah, and
Whether it's yeah,
no, I think, and that's where all boys education for me and working with basketball, that's helped me because
yeah,
guys will never come forward on your terms. You
yeah,
know, that's something that guys do. They, you know, women are the same way, but in a more intense, you know, goes because of the battle with pride, the
yeah,
battle with insecurity. They're going to come in there, so you always have to walk with them and work with them, and like, and I'm just thankful, so thankful for my all boys education.
yeah,
I when I look at like one of the top three decisions I've made, you know,
yeah,
one is accepting Jesus Christ.
yeah,
Two is marrying my wife because you know me if I didn't do that, and three probably my you know all boys education, the decision that I made to go there.
yeah.
It's up there. It's top five for
It's
sure for me
yeah.
personally.
It was great for me. My all guys school in DC. It was awesome for me. Awesome to be around men and awesome to be formed with men. Have those experience those those 4 years of high school. They're really formative experiences, and
So
you're really
important.
open to things. And to go through with brothers is awesome. But I want to say this, like to the co-ed schools, it's not throwing shade on co-ed schools because there's and it's not saying that I'm talking when I say this, I'm speaking about the level of formation of men, right? The formation of men. I think that men being in an environment with other men, learning from their experiences, brotherhood, and them being formed together, that makes it easier to form men. It makes it more natural to form men in those environments. Co-ed school, you can form great people. You can form great men and women. It's just a little bit. It's gonna be a little bit more difficult. And this is not a judgment on a student's education, but when you talk about the formation of men being around other men, I think there's a intentional formation that happens, but then I think there's a natural formation that happens through just the presence of other men and discussion. You know, um, so I just and also to touch back what you were saying before, I think there's a natural empathy that's cultivated because when I talk to my other brother, I understand that he's going through the same thing I'm going through, right? He's going through the exact same thing, and when I'm tempted to be judgmental because I think I'm the out of my frustration because I think that I'm the only one who's going through this, I can look to 10 other brothers who are going through the same thing. Then all of a sudden I don't have to be judgmental. Then all of a sudden I can look to the root of my issues and talk to my brother about his issues. There's no competition because we're all going through it. So I think that's when we talk about empathy and having these conversations. That's what I think, the virtue of having an all guys, I'm not looking to impress anybody. I'm not looking to be different because we're all the same. We're all the same. So it cultivates the ability or willingness to be empathetic because we're all going through that. We're all going through the same thing at the same time.
Yeah, and men are different than women, like my grandmother says, and men are different than women, and women are different than men, and men are different than women. We need to realize this
There's
ASAP.
nothing, yeah, and I
And
think
there's
that's
nothing. It
not.
doesn't make one better or one worse. It doesn't
It
make
doesn't.
them, you know, lower or higher. What it means is they're different.
But it's kind of crazy that I don't know. So it's kind of crazy that we gotta say that. I think that's like, that, I mean, you talk about the world that we live in right now, the fact that we have to explain that women and men are different.
Well, my grandmother says why we have to say it is, don't people realize that Jesus was a boy? My 105-year-old grandmother gets it. I mean, she's like,
so
she the best thing she says, and she did a podcast. You got to check this one out. You're gonna die. I mean, but I'm gonna do another one with her because she's hilarious. But she said that, she said, when did truth not become truth anymore? She says the number one thing we've lost is a sense of reality. This is a 105-year-old woman, 104-year-old woman. She's like, she says this is the worst generation for anybody to live. Not because what's happening is worse, because World War II was worse than what was going on right now. She says, but it's so bad for kids because they're lost, because there's nothing that is true for them anymore.
Yeah, that's true. Now your grandmother, she has the gift of wisdom and experience. So she sees she's a good person to go to get like perspective, because she's seen like what it was versus what it is. And it is.
I think I need to have her on like every other week. That's what I'm thinking.
Give me her number and let me have her on speed dial. Because it's true, man. Like the devil works in division. The devil works in division. And if you look at the culture that we live in right now, the society that we live in right now, it is more divided now than ever.
Yeah, you should come to a basketball tournament. It's like, I mean, it's like war. Just like who you're rooting for.
it's like geographical, divided by geography, divided by race, social economic status, gender, transgender, all these things. Like there's more division in the culture right now, and the devil's like, he's dancing in the midst of it.
He's having
it's like I look at it like this. You play football, right?
Of course, yeah.
Like offense and defense, right? Offense has to, they got to be working together. Someone messes up an offense in a football game, then something's going to go wrong. You can pinpoint where that person messed up to make that play, like to destroy that play. Defense, they should be organized, but what's the defensive scheme? Just mess up whatever the offense is doing.
Yeah.
So if I gotta run into somebody, or if I gotta trip somebody, or if I gotta blitz, if I gotta do that, as long as I'm messing up what the offense is doing, then and we're individually messing up what the offense is doing, then we're successful. That's when we look at evil right now. It's breaking down things in every arena, and that this is where you get to where we're at right now, and the devil is dancing in the midst of that.
Well, what we need to do is we need to build all boys schools, and our country will be better. That's what I say. But after what it's not the only answer, but it's a big answer. And one day you're gonna be a headmaster, and we're gonna build an all boys school. What do you think, Brian? You think like they just closed my all boys school? They say it's the same name, but they asked me to go on their podcast. I've declined my alma mater 5 times because I won't go on because it's a co-ed school now. But I don't know if that's bad, but we'll see. All right. I don't know what to do with myself. You don't have to answer. You don't have to say, we'll see. But one day we got to build an all boys school. I don't care what you say. If I'm dead, you better build it.
Is whatever school, it has to be intentional, and
what are you, a diplomat? He's a diplomat now. You got that from your father. But let me tell you something, Brian. We are going to have people get a hold of you. We're going to have people encourage you, and we're always going to be hanging out, and we're always going to be keeping things going. I'm excited for what we got going on in Columbus and all across the country, and we're just going to keep it going. But this is Brian Greenfield, and you got to get him to come speak at one of your events, because this guy is unbelievable. He will bring a message like never before, but he's the most thoughtful guy, caring guy, and encouraging guy. And keep it going, Brian. Don't be discouraged. And I can't wait to see you soon. I think I'm going to see you pretty soon. I'm coming to Tampa though, so you better get ready.
All right, man. I heard.
All right, love you.
Yeah,
brother.
I know.
I'll see you soon.
I don't think they're ready yet. They'll get
Thanks
there.
for listening to the Encouragement Conquers All podcast with Justin Fatica. Make sure to subscribe and follow to be notified when the newest episodes of the podcast go live. You can find contact information and important links in the show notes. Stay tuned for the next episode.